What's up everybody, how you guys doing today? So we are back with a kind of another lore-based series, looking at some of the crazy Fallout 4 fan theories that have been created by the community. So after reading through the comments of last video, it is very evident to me that I need to explain to you all what a theory is. So the technical definition from Google is a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. In Fallout 4 theory crafting, what that basically means is we have this evidence over here, and this evidence probably proves that this thing means this thing. Like there might be evidence for Preston Garvey to be a criminal mastermind, but at the same time, the theory and the subsequent hypothesis that comes from it, Preston Garvey being a criminal mastermind, is meant to be falsifiable. So then you would gather evidence that he is not a criminal mastermind, and maybe even a further observation that he is just the head of the Minutemen itself. A theory doesn't have to be something that is barely verifiable with kind of loose ties here and there. There's a theory of gravity. The reason I'm saying this is because in my previous video and in this video, there are things that aren't immediately obvious. With some back reading though, and maybe a little bit of a deeper look into the lore, they become a bit more obvious. There's still a theory, even if it's very likely and the lore really points to it, that doesn't confirm it. It still is just a theory, and that's what we're seeing in this video, as well as some more outlandish things. But with this kind of annoying explanation that I felt the need to do based on the comment section of the last video, we'll jump right into this. So the first theory we're looking at is the Gunners actually originated and were the inhabitants of Vault 75. So if you guys don't know, Vault 75 is under Malden Middle School. The idea being that we needed a vault to actually store our children. So in a kind of crisis where bombs are dropping, the children from the middle school can very quickly enter into the vault and our future generations could be preserved and protected. Actually exploring and entering into the place in Fallout 4, you find it inhabited by a ton of Gunners. There's a kind of mini quest that you can do down there and uncover some of these hidden secrets or backstory as to the true nature and meaning of this vault. So as you enter in, you do realize this was targeted mainly to kind of low income class, people that otherwise may have not been able to afford entry into a vault, but these children or their children would be allowed in by government grants at their graces. You later learn that this is actually a very unethical experiment being run by the government itself, of course in collaboration with Vault-Tec. Basically what they were trying to do is take in kids and see if they could breed kind of superhumans and undergo a process of eugenics. What that basically means is if there was somebody that was born without the ideal body type or structure or intelligence level, they would be killed off, so you only have the top-notch people actually breeding and reproducing. It's kind of survival of the fittest in the most ideal way, but obviously it's immensely unethical. Throughout the vault you'll find a ton of things pointing towards this. There's a bunch of kind of gym equipment which isn't really found in some of the other vaults, as well as a shooting range. In the classroom, these kids were learning about the art of war, different military tactics, and things like that. And finally, probably the most messed up part is they were actually trying to modify them genetically. They were actually doing different hormone research in addition to the otherwise selective breeding, which basically they determined by actually undergoing those physical fitness and shooting and kind of intelligence tasks. If you were performing really well, they would kill you off or have a euthanization and then harvest some of your genetic material for use in future generations. This of course all being undergone by the government with the idea of creating a super soldier. And just to really paint an accurate picture, 74% was the best turnout. So basically 74% were qualified as inferior, basically just being killed off as useless, where the remaining 26% were actually preserved. There really wasn't a very high success ratio with this. So obviously that's not how you find the vault. You find it in disarray, many things destroyed. So what actually happened? Well, basically as these kids became more and more trained with the actual success of the selective breeding, they started to catch wind of what was kind of going on by the science staff there. That they weren't just being trained to be heroes as they were led to believe, being able to take on the bandits and monsters that they would encounter after they exited the vault, but actually self-aware that they were a messed up government project. So with that, they actually revolted. The fact that they were all trained killers made it relatively easy for them to take down all of the support staff or anyone holding them in, as well as they developed a bomb to actually blow the vault door off. And then they were gone. That's really where the lore part of this ends. Of course, again, as you find the vault, you see it inhabited by Gunners. So the theory here, and this is in no way suggested by the game or even the Fallout wikis, is that those children that did escape, there was a relatively small group of them that did make it out, but they actually went on to found the Gunners themselves. The Gunners are without a doubt the hardest and most difficult enemies in Fallout 4. They follow this kind of military-like structure. As you could assume, these kids were meant to study and learn, as they did learn about other military tactics. If you look at the actual lore, basically it says that the Gunners chose Vault 75 to inhabit later on because they were looking for ways to expand their reach of the Commonwealth. But perhaps the reason they really are there is because they are kind of originating from there. Their founding members, however old they may be, those original Gunners and the descendants actually are re-inhabiting that vault, as well as some of the other ones they do hold over the Commonwealth. The Institute has a ton of theories surrounding it, these ranging from totally outlandish to actually pretty plausible and supported by other lore. Well, one such theory surrounds why you are actually released from the vault. For most of the game, you're kind of led to believe it was more of an accident than anything else. Maybe after a certain amount of time, the stasis just turns off, or, you know, there was just some faulty malfunction that released you. Again, most people probably play through the entire game thinking that, because only with the Institute ending do you actually find out about why you were really released. And more or less what that is Father let you out of the Institute. Oh, big reveal. But I imagine that was also fairly predictable, even with some of the other endings. His initial reasoning is basically it was an experiment for him. He wanted to see what you would do and how you would do it. He just mentioned though that he truly didn't believe you would actually find him, and that's quite remarkable. He exclaims how he honestly didn't know if you'd even survive. The way he words this, it's meant to be very kind of passive in his nature. He didn't believe that you had to stay in there. The only reason you were in there originally is as a secondary candidate in case Sean didn't work out as director. So then now that he obviously did work out as director, it kind of just made sense for you to do whatever you want. Well, this isn't entirely true. And actually one of the dialogue options, he does mention how he was pretty happy that you found him.
Well, I suppose I wanted to see what would happen. An experiment of sorts. I had no idea what kind of man you were, you see. Would the Commonwealth corrupt you, as it has everything else? Would you even survive? Perhaps most curious to me, would you, after all this time, attempt to find me? And now I know the answer.
Well, here I am. Was it worth it?
I believe so.
After watching that, I feel like he was pretty emotional, especially when compared to some of the other dialogue you have with him. And later he even mentions that he's pretty glad that you found him, and this is one of the best outcomes that could have come out of the situation. Well, of course, later in the game you discover that Father actually has an extremely aggressive form of cancer, and his goal is for you to take over the Institute. The theory here is that's the real reason you were let go. It's not him just trying to run an experiment or that there was a malfunction or anything like that. It's that Father started to feel an immense amount of guilt and remorse, and now that he found out he was dying, he actually wanted to meet his, well, father. Again, this one's not a huge far-struck, but I could definitely see a lot of people missing this and not having all these dots to connect. This isn't totally true. Obviously, the father character is meant to feel very kind of robotic and look at things from an empirical perspective, that having emotions really isn't the best case scenario as a human. So the idea that he was actually feeling guilty and remorseful goes way against his character, but it was such a deep-rooted concern for him that he actually released his own father when he knew he would otherwise not be able to meet him. It's kind of a happier ending, definitely one of the happier theories out there. But at the same time, it might also be a very sad ending depending on which side or which faction you decide to partner with. So last but not least, definitely one of the more outlandish out of the bunch is there's actually a cat vault. So let me explain. In all the previous Fallouts except Fallout 2, there are no cats. In Fallout New Vegas, there's even a dialogue option with Mr. House where he exclaims, "There's more than one way to skin a cat," as the saying goes, or went, that is, cats being extinct. So this of course implying that cats are now extinct, at least in the Mojave. This of course is on the other side of the country, so maybe that is outdated information for the East Coast, aka where Fallout 4 takes place, in case you're not good at geography. But honestly, in all the previous Fallout games, there are no cats. And of course, Fallout 3 also taking place on the eastern seaboard. This seems rather peculiar if cats are just a common thing on the East Coast. Well, of course, there was actually one other cat that was in Fallout 2. There was a little girl that did own her own cat, and basically her mom ate it. The reason a lot of these cats are thought to go extinct is because they were such easy prey, and when times really got tough and, you know, some of these people were struggling like they were in Fallout 2 in the post-apocalypse, cats were something you could eat because there were so many of them. And obviously, as we see in Fallout 4, they really didn't mutate that all much, so they had very few defenses. So as a result of that, and of course I'm sure many cats dying in the war and bombs dropping, there aren't any cats left. Except suddenly they make a reappearance in Fallout 4. What's the deal about this? Well, there's two theories surrounding this. One is that in one of the surrounding regions there was actually a cat vault. Maybe it was just cats in an existing vault, but there's nothing to suggest that. So maybe there was a dedicated vault that doesn't appear in the game, but is in the surrounding region that was full of cats, or just had two cats that could breed. And then as this vault was opened, all those cats began to repopulate the surrounding regions, one of those being the Commonwealth. The idea idea of all these animals and maybe a few select humans being in one vault is kind of funny, but it honestly makes a lot of sense. If Vault-Tec really was trying to at least somewhat prepare for what would happen after the bombs dropped, having animals as part of that new world does have its benefits. Even beyond that, an alternate theory that's a little bit more grim is that these cats are actually all Institute spies and none of them are actually real. This is due to the fact that cats should have been extinct, as all of the other Fallout lore does suggest. So the Institute creating these cats to kind of just wander around the Commonwealth are aiding in their overwatch. I covered this in a previous theory. Also, the crows and all that are also watchers for the Institute spies, and maybe even mannequins too, depending on how deep you want to get with this. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. So those are 3 Fallout 4 theories. I think all of them are pretty interesting. Again, some of these are more heavily supported than others, but I would definitely say each of them kind of gives you a almost new perspective on the game. It gives you something to think about. As always, again, I thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video, and well, I hope to see you all next time. Later.